I want to talk briefly about abating penalties with the IRS. You may be asking, why can I not abate interest? The IRS doesn't abate interest. There are exceptions to those rules. Sometimes they do, but it's very rare. Essentially, when you owe the IRS, it's like a bank mortgage or a house mortgage. You're going to be paying principal, and you're going to be paying interest. Your goal is to abate the penalties that may occur. When will the IRS abate penalties? They have very specific rules on how they can abate penalties and when they'll abate penalties. But I normally tell my clients you need an act of God. What do I mean by that? Fire, flood, embezzlement, death in the family, serious illness in the family. Those reasons allow us to claim a reasonable cause to abate penalties. Abating penalties is quite a lot of work. We need to justify it based on the IRS's internal rules and policies about why we can abate penalties or how we can abate penalties. So if we get into that situation when we're going to abate penalties, we're going to be asking the client a lot of questions, and we're going to document it. When somebody went to the surgery, we're going to ask for hospital records. Those records combined with a reasonable explanation about why taxes weren't paid that particular period will normally put you in a situation you can have an abatement. One common situation is where a person hasn't paid their taxes for 4 years. Well, it's going to be very, very difficult for the IRS to justify abating penalties every single year. They're going to say, we understand the first year, no abate the penalties for the first year, but for the second and third and fourth year, why didn't you pay your taxes? This is very common in a business when payroll taxes are not paid. If they're not paid the first year, first quarter, no problem. But after that, the owner of the business should have been aware that payroll taxes were not being paid. They should have identified that. They should have got a new bookkeeper, new outside accountant that assisted them in paying their taxes. I have a recent example where I had a business that owed well over $140,000 in penalties. What happened is they hired a new bookkeeper. The bookkeeper was swearing up and down that he paid the taxes, filed the forms and paid the taxes. He was doing it through a software program. And lo and behold, nothing got transferred to the IRS. The IRS didn't know that the tax returns were not being filed because they weren't being filed electronically. As far as paying the taxes, he'd pay the taxes haphazardly. So the owner never really picked up on it. About 2.5 years later, the owner finally found out about it, only because their account was levied. Once that happened, we were able to contact the IRS and we worked out abatement of some penalties, but a lot of the penalties we were unable to abate. There was no reasonable cause. Another penalty abatement arises where there's a compliant taxpayer for years and years and years and years. And for some reason, one year they took out an IRA, did not withhold enough taxes, and they ended up with a $10,000 liability. And they got hit with penalties for underpaying their taxes. In those circumstances, we can get a penalty abated without requesting a lot of documentation as to why you took the money out in the first place, medical records or other records. It's easier, but it still takes a little bit of time to negotiate that. That's it on abatement of penalties. Feel free to call our office if you have any additional questions.